Welcome to Women Don't Do That, where we empower you with inspiration, knowledge, and skills to redefine your boundaries and unleash your potential. I'm Stephanie Mitton, founder and CEO of Beacon North Strategies and your guide. Small town girl turned CEO while navigating career, motherhood, ADHD, and chronic migraines. Our conversations range from interviews with visionary women to solo episodes filled with actionable insights. We are your hub for turning what ifs into let's go. Are you ready to redefine your possible? Let's get started.
Today on Women Don't Do That, I'm joined by Kiwanuka, an award-winning journalist and the host of TVO's podcast, Mistreated. Her work explores how medicine has misunderstood, dismissed, mistreated women, not just in one area of health, but across so many things that impact women's lives. This conversation is about healthcare, power, credibility, storytelling, what happens when we are not believed. And so many of us have been there, myself included. If you have ever felt dismissed, rushed, confused, or alone in a healthcare system, this episode is for you. And we don't just talk about the issues, there is knowledge in there, but also action that we can take. And so I hope that you take a listen. Welcome to Women Don't Do That.
Thanks so much for having me, Stephanie. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, me too. We like to try to get to know guests a little bit more. So just wondering, what motivates you to live your best life?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think my kids. And I know that sometimes when you have children, you fall into the trap of my children are my life, they're my meaning. I learned very quickly that children are not ours. They're themselves. They don't belong to us. We are just, they choose us to guide them and protect them on this planet, but they're their own people. And I think what grounds me is that I had a very difficult childhood, and my kids have allowed me or given me the beauty to kind of like experience a second childhood. When I joined Instagram, I joined because I wanted to keep like a diary of like them growing up, the things that we would do. And then Instagram was completely changed. I don't share as many photos of them anymore. I'm just very cautious. Yes. But I had this hashtag second childhood. And it was just like seeing the world anew. And it's just been such a blessing.
Oh, that's amazing. How old are they?
Now they are 13 and 15.
Okay. I have a 12-year-old girl and a 15-year-old girl.
Oh, similar. So yeah, different times.
Yes.
Different times. And that's the same. My daughter just turned 13 and my son is 15.
Right.
So she is going through the teens and I'm adjusting. That's all I'll say about that.
Oh my gosh. Yes, my Instagram has also changed because they don't like you to just put up pictures of them either. So.
Oh no, like it's so, even if I'm like I always try to explain it to them before, like when you get older, you'll go through a moment when you want to see pictures of yourself when you were younger. I have like 3 or 4 pictures from when I was small. And I cherish them, but I get it. Like, who wants to walk around every day with the camera, Yes. But what I've noticed, I don't know about you, Stephanie, but I noticed that for a lot of the pictures, I'm not in them.
I know.
I'm always taking the pictures.
Yes. That is definitely one of the challenges for sure. So what does life look like for you right now? You're in the office, you're at work, you have kids. Like what's going on?
Life is busy, but it's better. So it's work. Since Mistreated launched, I've been doing about 90% of the work on it. So I've been producing it, chasing, you know how it is. It's hard. Chasing guests, writing questions, writing scripts, researching the topics, because the podcast is very research heavy. And also I have to show up as a mom, and some days not so great, better now. And then I'm also married, and I have 2 dogs.
Full life.
A full life, and I'm a plant mom too. So yeah, life is better. For a long time, like the past few years, dealing with health challenges, it was harder to manage, but I'm a very positive person, and I'm better today than I was a few years ago. So
Mm.
Blessed.
I love that. That's great to hear that things are, I don't know if this is the right word, but calming down a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They're calming down. I feel like I'm reconnecting with my body again. I'm
Mm.
still navigating like chronic pain, but just being able to like kind of feel an ab.
Oh my gosh.
Just one.
Ma'am, I feel like I relate so much to everything that you're saying. Oh, I'm very interested in this. Okay. Are you open to sharing a little bit about what are some of the health challenges you've been going through?
Sure. Yeah, of course. I'm very open about it because I just find that silence doesn't do us any favors,
Mm,
especially when it's if you can share your story and it can help somebody. So in 2022, I had COVID for the very first time,
mm,
and I had like I had all three vaccines like from each. Remember, there was a time when we were like, I only have a certain
yes.
vaccine. I was like, I
Yes.
don't care, just put it in my veins, because my son at the time had asthma, and I was coming
Mm,
into work, and I was really afraid of getting my family sick or getting anyone around me sick. And so when I got COVID for the first time in 2022, I was sick, but not like my husband was actually sicker.
mm,
And I was kind of surprised by how like it changed, like it destroyed my health.
mm,
I had symptoms of like long COVID for months and months. But the other thing that it did, it changed my cycle.
mm.
For one time, I heavy bleeding for 52 days. Not that cute, like
Oh,
bleeding you see in the commercials where people are frolicking in the wheat. No, it was like I was in the ER almost weekly. I needed
oh
to
my
get
God.
iron infusions. I was really, really sick. And then I found out that I needed to have surgery. I had fibroids, and
Mm,
no one could really tell me what they were or what caused them.
hmm.
And then I was told that I needed, because they were so big. And for years and years, my stomach kept getting bigger. And I kept going to the doctor saying, I feel off. I can't keep my food down. I can't sleep. And I kept getting told, just lose 5 pounds. You're a mom. Just get some sleep.
Mm,
I almost called the podcast Just Lose 5 Pounds, because I was like,
yeah.
how is that the answer for everything?
Yes. Or anxiety. It's always like lose weight, you're
Just
anxious,
lose
get
weight.
more
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah, and that's like the prescription. It should just be bottled into a pill or something, right?
Yeah.
But it was so by the time I found out that it was fibroids that were the issue, they were so large, I needed to have surgery. And I was told that it would take 2 years. And I was shocked
Hmm.
because I couldn't even imagine living one more week the way that I was living, because it was impacting everything. My hair was falling out. I
Mm,
had really bad brain fog. I started having very bad anxiety. And then I
mm,
realized, like, I've learned since that when you are extremely anemic, like your body's working overtime. So you have these feelings like your heart is racing. You can't, like, everything is just flared up, right? And
yes.
for me to be
Yeah.
told, oh, just wait 2 more years when I'm constantly bleeding, my period is never ending. And then they started giving me medication that was just like off label. I
Mm,
was given medication that treats prostate cancer. I was given another medication that pushed me into menopause. So that was another fun thing to experience.
oh
And
my
all the
gosh.
while, I have to be mom, I have to be a wife, and then I
Hmm.
have to show up to my job. And my job at the time was I was co-hosting the agenda and also hosting my own show called The Thread. And these are really like the agenda is a very high pressure job. You're
Hmm.
speaking to policymakers, politicians, very, very smart people. You
Yes.
can't have a lapse in judgment, or, you have to be very, very sharp. And thankfully, my work didn't suffer, but how I looked changed.
Yeah.
And obviously that impacted how I saw myself,
Mm,
because, I started gaining a lot of weight. My hair fell out. I didn't know how to like style it. And I don't, there's no one you can go talk to and say, hey, I'm a forward facing person, and I'm going through this horrible thing. And
hmm.
I think part of me also talking about it publicly was just the dismissal of being
Hmm.
told, "Oh, just wait 2 years," as if in 2 years I might not be here. And that was a real fear that I had. And I saw Amber Mack was talking about it
Yes.
online. And I love Amber so much because she gave me, and at the time I just kind of knew her. I met her through a mutual friend, Erica M, and just kind of knew her on social. And then I reached out to her And she was such a soft landing for me because she was able to give me information about, because we were similar, we had this basically the same diagnosis. And so I was able to, I just started talking about it because it was just very frustrating. And I think the thing that made me break was when I went to get my iron infusion and I found out that I had to pay for it. And thankfully I had private insurance, but it made me very angry to think that you're going through all these things and then you're being told, oh, by the way, in order for you to feel better or just a little bit better, you have to pay for that medication. What if you don't have private insurance? You know,
Yeah. And because the system is delayed, like you wouldn't need
yeah,
transfusions if they could just do the
to
surgery.
stay alive, right?
Yeah,
And they were
yeah.
not cheap. It was like $400, $500. And if you wanted to get the iron that was fast, like to give you this more symptoms, you had to pay more. And it just felt like such a unfair thing. Living in Canada, having access to universal health care, we're G7 country, and I'm being told wait for 2 years. In the meantime, I'm supposed to be going to, and also I'm a very, like, I think about finances a lot, and every time that I was in the ER, I was like, I am using up so many, like, I'm clogging up the system.
Right. Like the amount of times that you went and all of those things maybe could have was a doctor's salary to have.
Exactly. I'm like, there's other people that need the bed and I'm in the bed every other week. I'm there. I'm getting the iron infusion. I'm clogging the system. No wonder there's a backup, right? That it's just kind of like a domino effect.
Right.
And it's cost every time I see a doctor,
Yes.
they're going to tell me the same thing. And then, but I can't get, unless I have the surgery, I need to get the treatment at the hospital to stop my bleeding. It just felt like this doesn't make sense.
Right. Right. I should say for listeners too, like part of the reason I jumped into this question so soon is because, and we're going to talk about this more, but the podcast that you started when you were talking about is about women's health. Yeah. So what happened then? You found out it was 2 years. Did it take 2 years?
It didn't, because I just started. It took over a year. Wow. So maybe like 14 months. So I still had to, and I was very lucky. I am very lucky to have a family doctor. Feels strange to say that, but there's a lot of people without a family doctor. Yeah. And basically her and I we were doing cold calls to gynecologists around the province.
Saying, I'll go anywhere.
I'll go anywhere. I will go anywhere. I just need to have the surgery. And then by doing that, by advocating for me very publicly, and I have to say that initially I was afraid because, again, I'm a forward-facing person and being very vocal about this. So how could this impact my career in a negative way? And will people think that I'm incompetent? Will people think that I am, I'm crossing the line by talking about women's business, But again, as a journalist, I go where the story goes. And it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm the test subject, not the test subject, but I guess I'm the lived experience. So again, not talking about it, it doesn't help anybody. Right. And then when I was doing research and I found that we don't even track gynecology wait times, I was like, what? We track knee surgeries, we track cataract surgery. And not to say that that isn't important. I'm like, but why can't you?
But why aren't we also tracking this other thing?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm going to have moments of rage in this interview.
Yes, exactly. And lots of moments of rage. I
feel like the women's health one is so hard because we know, because we live it, right? And like even when I was figuring out some of the questions to ask you today, I'm like women know this stuff. Like we know we need the change, right? Like that's we live it every day. But thank you for sharing that. I have chronic migraines, and as you may know, I don't know if you've done episodes on this, but migraines are also mostly women, right? So don't get the attention.
It's a leading cause of disability for women 18 to 49 around the world, migraines.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, like people, every once in a while they'll be like, oh, like, how are your migraines? You're feeling better? I'm like, no, I'm like highly medicated. Like it's quite the regime just to keep me functioning most of the time. And on top of that, there's no cure. So when you go in and you're like, oh, I only had this many this month, they're like, great. No questions, nothing. It doesn't matter because they can't do anything about it. It's like, thanks for coming in. Here's some Botox in your head and we'll see you again in 3 months, right? So like these kinds of things are very real. Another one that I was listening to your episode about endometriosis, and I went in to have my tubes removed. And while they were in there, the gynecologist was like, "Oh, you also had endo." So I scraped that out while I was in there, and I was like, "What?" And then I realized like, oh, I had like all this cramping off cycle and stuff, and I just was putting a heating pad on it and being like, "Ah, that's a woman's body." Like exactly the type of stuff that you talk about. Mind-boggling.
I'm so sorry that you went through that. That is like that's yeah. I had the fibroids diagnosis, and then when the surgeon went in, he's like, "Oh, has anyone told you that you have adenomyosis?" Oh, adenomyosis. I don't know how to say it properly.
Yes.
And I was like, "No." He's like, "You have it."
And that's the one that's on the inside of your uterus?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So your
okay.
uterus thickens. And what's interesting was after all the things that I went through, and for your listeners, I suggest like, this is the thing about health, like manage it like you manage your finances.
Oh yeah.
Be on top of that. Manage it like you do with your credit.
Yes. Oh,
Because you've got to be on top of that.
this is
Because
the
I
best
found that,
piece of advice you can give.
yeah, the best piece of advice, you have to manage your health like it's your
Yes.
credit.
Yes. Because even
like,
I was in the doctor's office the other day because I'm like having a few different symptoms of things. And of course, like it could be menopause, but it could be this thing. And I mentioned to the GP, she's a newer GP for me, that I also had endo. And she was like, "Oh, that's not on your records." So she went and looked at like the OBGYN report from like the surgery, and it's in there, but nobody put it in the normal notes. So she didn't even know. So when
yeah,
I'm coming in with like different symptoms of things, she's not even thinking like, "Oh, it could be your endo,"
yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Which like
and you know,
now my girls are getting periods and they're having certain symptoms, and in my head I'm now going endo,
yeah.
right? And I wouldn't have known to think that if I didn't know that I had it.
And it's not a blessing in a way. Like I know
Mm,
it's a weird thing to say, but I find that what I went through has been a blessing in the sense
mm,
that I can protect my child, I can protect other people's children, and
yes,
we can push these conversations forward because it's the same. You know, I have a daughter who
yes.
just turned 13, and I'm also in the back of my head, you know, I'm monitoring her cycle to make sure that what's normal and what isn't,
Yeah.
because I was anemic from 16, and everybody kept saying to me, it's normal, it's normal. So
Right.
imagine if you had like early
Oh, yeah.
intervention, even with
Yes.
endometriosis, they keep saying the earlier, like they keep talking about how girls, like teen girls, they should be checked for endo,
Right.
because the earlier you catch it, the
Hmm.
better quality of life, because it grows,
Right.
right? And then by the time, you know, if by the time we're in our 30s, 40s, or 50s, that's when we're like, oh, now I'm getting
Yeah.
the
Well, and
answer
this is
why
it's
I felt
interesting what
bad.
you were saying about your health and our kids' ages, because what I'm starting to find is you're now out of that stage where they need you to help them keep you alive to a certain
Yeah.
extent, and you do get a little bit more time to yourself, right? And I started to make a list. Okay, I need to address this with the doctor. I need to address this. And I also started going back to the gym. So when you said starting to see your abs again, I was laughing because I literally have been going back to the gym in the last year. I've started boxing, like just really doing some fun stuff. And I Googled and like on TikTok and stuff and was like, "Oh, like what are the best ab exercises?" And I started doing that at the gym, and I'm not like I could start to see the outline of my abs. I still have some like pudge in the middle,
Isn't
but
that
the
exciting?
outline, yes, but I was like, I actually was like, haven't seen you in a while. So
Hey, old girl.
so when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, it's just like, it's very funny. You kind of get to a certain age, your kids are a certain
Yeah,
age, and like similar stories where like your health has gone to shit. You
yeah,
now have time, quote
yeah.
unquote, to start to address it and not just putting yourself last,
Yeah.
right?
But I think it's so important for us when you're a mom. It's so hard when you have kids, because this is the other thing that I'm learning about, like doing Mistreated. We've spoken to a couple of experts who say that pregnancy is the first stress test for your body.
Mm,
And we've treated pregnancy as just as, well, you're a woman, you've got the things, and you know, your body knows how to do it.
yeah,
But that doesn't mean, first of all, like you are, because even I end up having like an emergency C-section, even though everybody's like, don't do that. Don't get a C-section. Like it's your choice.
No,
I know some people like,
I know.
or don't use the epidural. I'm like, but science is here for a reason. Hello.
I know.
You don't get an award for suffering.
I know.
But yeah, like it's like you don't understand like how you're pregnant, like when you get pregnant, the stress it puts on your bodies.
Oh yeah.
And I think by the time our kids get the teens, our body's like, hello.
Yeah.
You need to start paying attention to this. Like I've had it.
Yeah, exactly. I've had enough.
I've had enough. And but I hope like people who have like younger kids try to find time for yourself, pay attention to it.
It's so hard, but to try. I know. Yeah, it's really hard. I also had an emergency C-section, and I remember literally saying to the doctor at one point about the epidural, I was like, how many people get them? This was a long time ago now, but she said something like 80%, and I was like, oh, I'm no hero, give me that. Like, like what? I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. But so my first one, I actually had a midwife, and then it still ended up in a C-section. And so when people they're kind of like anti-C-section or whatever, I'm like, I even had a midwife. Like, I'm not having this fight with you.
Yeah, and I wish like we could be gentler with each other too, because for a long time I had a friend who said, "Oh, you cheated," and I was like, "What?"
I got cut open. That's great. It's just great fun.
I cheated? Are you joking? They cut through all of my like 7 layers of whatever it is. And the other thing that I'm learning is that we're not even told about scar tissue. When you have C-sections or abdominal surgery, more likely to have scar tissue, and scar tissue is nothing to sneeze at.
Well, and especially because women, we often have a lot of surgeries down in that area too, right? So it's
bowel obstructions, like all these things, it's like I cheated by being cut open. I would have loved to have a vaginal birth, right? And
I don't know if I would have loved that either, but both are hard. Let's just be real,
right? I met a friend of, we became friends in one of those birthing classes, and she had her baby maybe a week before I had my son. And I was losing it. I was like, I can't give birth. Why did I do this? I'm so scared. And she's like, ma'am, that baby has to come out. So you just have to make peace with it. It has to come out. You just have to make peace with it. So I was like, okay.
I like what you shared about like how we treat birth, and it makes me think about my first one. I was sick the entire pregnancy, like throwing up. Same. The second one, my GP finally went, I guess your body just like it's completely like rejecting this. Like it's rejecting it. I'm like, yep.
I mean, there are some women who consider like who have experienced suicide ideation because their bodies, and no one talks about it. So when it's happening to you, you blame yourself, and which is a terrible thing to do. But if we don't have these conversations, if we don't talk about the science behind it, the lack of research, the gaps in medicine, then the onus is placed on the individual, which is so unfair because it's such a huge burden to carry. When it is not your burden to carry, you haven't done
and you have experts for a reason,
the way it is.
Right? Like that's how the system has been set up, and it's so challenging. Some of you know I'm an entrepreneur, and one of the things that I do is I have a brand called the WOMENdontDOthat Academy, where we teach practical skills for work and career growth. And our next workshop is coming up. It's on authentic networking. When I first moved to Ottawa, I knew one person that lived in Ottawa that did politics. I had to learn how to walk into rooms, start conversations, and build relationships that felt real fast. This workshop is really for anybody who wants to learn more about networking and to feel more human and intentional while they're doing it. And people can tell the difference when it's not authentic. It's happening June 23rd in Ottawa, and the link is in the show notes for more information. I Googled some statistics, around women's health. You may know a lot more than I do, but I have in Canada, only 7% of major health research grants over 15 years focused on female-specific health questions, which is crazy to me. Endometriosis can take 11 years to diagnose. And closing Canada's women's health gap would add an estimated $37 billion annually to the economy by 2040.
Yeah, and that study's from McKinsey, and they said that it might actually be an undercount. So even with endometriosis, you have, I think the average amount, the average person takes 7 to 10 doctors to get a diagnosis just for endometriosis. So can you imagine fighting with, and I want to make this point too about doctors, because I was raised in a very conservative household where you defer to authority. You listen to your teachers, you listen to police officers, you listen to doctors. If a doctor said something to you, that was gospel, right? Because they've taken many years to study, and what they say is golden. And I think that's part of the reason why it makes it really hard to advocate for yourself. But I really want people to understand, your body better than anybody else does.
Yeah.
And yes, our doctor might say this, and you're like, okay, well, because you are deferring to their expertise.
Right.
But what I'm finding from the podcast is that women's health is not studied in the way that it should be. It has been understudied, under-researched. It has been underfunded. It wasn't mandated until 1993 for women to be included in clinical trials in the United States by the NIH. And in Canada, it was 1997. Except I keep hearing conflicting years for that, like for Canada. So I'm not really sure. It's really hard to also find definitive language, data about that. And I think that's part of it's like, that's a red flag, because it means that you're not tracking it.
No, and I mean, I own a business, and they say, like, if you're not measuring it, right, like, nothing's happening. So that's another.
You measure what you treasure. It was something that
exactly.
one of the doctors we spoke to said.
How do you square this? Like, doctors don't get enough hours in certain things, right? And we know there's not as much research in certain things. There's a lot of challenges around women's health. And then we have telling women to, like, trust their bodies and they know them better. And we also have a problem with misinformation online. How do those things square out?
That's the hard part, because that's a really good question. I found information about fibroids online on social media. My doctors didn't know any of it. Initially I had an older female doctor, and she didn't know very much. She didn't know anything about them.
Wow.
And I also found out that I was first diagnosed with fibroids in 2016. And I didn't find out until 2022 that I had them, because I think her mind was like, well, most women have them by age 50, and up to 80% of Black women have them. So I think that's how she diagnosed me. She, like, that race-based stuff, which is so infuriating. So she didn't know very much. And then I got a new doctor, and a younger doctor, a woman, and she also didn't know very much about fibroids. And I found so much information online on social media.
Yeah.
And I felt like, okay, I have the answers, thank goodness. But I also noticed that some of the things that people were saying, you can shrink them naturally. And I really, really, really wanted to believe that, and I started blaming myself again. And then I started doing my own research, because I was like, I don't know what to do. And you fall down those rabbit holes because
you're desperate.
Because that's the word. You're desperate for information.
You want to feel seen. You want to feel heard. Yes. You want the information. You want to understand why. You want to be able to, like, what's the do something in this situation?
Exactly, because something is wrong. I should not be bleeding the way that I'm bleeding. My doctor is saying it's okay, it's normal. When I go on social media, they're saying it's not normal. And I feel, I really hope that doctors hear what women are saying and understand that we're not attacking anyone. We're saying that historically they didn't learn very much about women's health,
and we're scared and we're tired. Like, you have to understand the intent and positioning that people are coming in with. And I know, I mean, to each their own, but for me personally, when I do health stuff, especially if it's online, like I try to make sure that the person is like a proper researcher at a university or like a doctor. I have found a lot of great information about my migraines from American doctors, stuff that like I didn't even know, but they're like specialists in migraine. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I've
Yeah,
learned so much that has been really helpful.
I think there's some doctors who are, I know one of the leading advocate, the leading person who's talking about endometriosis is a male doctor.
Hmm.
And for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is something I never knew about, but I
Mm.
learned about doing this podcast. The person that's been researching it for years and years, he was a male doctor from the UK.
Right.
There's people, I think for people, if you're looking for information online,
Hmm.
just do your due diligence. Again, you have to
Yeah.
be on top of your health. Just because your favorite influencer says something, like load your personal health information on AI, just do your due diligence
Hmm.
and understand that. Check to see if it's a paid ad, that post, right?
Yeah. Is it a
Check to see
paid
if they're
ad?
studying
Is it a
it.
reputable medical journal if they're citing a
Exactly.
study? Like
Yeah.
basic
And look it
checks.
up. You
Hmm.
have to. There's no easy answers.
Yeah.
That you have to do the work. I know people don't want to hear that, but
Yes.
you have to manage your health like it's
Hmm.
your credit. You have to put in the work because
Yes.
it's going to take a long time for medicine to catch up. It's
Yes.
going to
No,
take
I
a very
think
long
you're right. And because the system has so
time.
many issues, right? Like maybe, I don't know, in
Stephanie,
the past, if you
female
had to
mice
advocate as
were
much.
not mandated to be included in clinical trials until 2016.
Oh my God. Damn.
2016. My kids are older. 2016.
Yeah, that's
Like,
true.
and
Wow.
because some researchers were saying that using female mice is too messy and
When
the
I
hormone.
say that those kind of statistics to people, like they don't believe them because they're
Yeah,
so atrocious. Like especially to men, they're like, "That's ridiculous. How can that be
yeah.
possible?
I don't
How
believe
could
them
they
either.
not have like tested tampons without blood? What do you mean?"
2023.
Yeah, I
2023.
know
We
they
found out
literally
that
do not believe it, and they will argue with you.
yeah,
I'm like, no, no,
yeah,
like go look it up. It's ridiculous. So
yeah.
tell me more about the podcast because part of what you're doing is to help with these kinds of conversations, bring them to light. So tell us more about that.
So I pitched the podcast to TVO. It took about 2 years for it to be greenlit. And I maintained that there is a story here. And the more that
Hmm.
I read, I like medications do you remember Big Little Lies?
Hmm.
With Nicole Kidman. I mean, I love Nicole Kidman. Anything she's in, I am in. There was a storyline of where one of the characters, I think it was Nicole Kidman's character, took a sleeping medication
Mm.
and she would end up like in places she doesn't, and she couldn't remember how she got there, and she got into a car accident. And then when I was doing the research for Mistreated, I realized that this is actually something like they pulled it from like history. There was a medication, a
Oh.
sleep aid, that was very popular, and they had tested the diet, like the dosages, on male bodies, not female bodies.
Mm.
So when women took it, the dose they were getting like overdosed, and there were stories in the news of them getting into car accidents, harming themselves, and like this is very very recent history, right?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
the more that I read, I like the in it shouldn't surprise when you said that men don't believe it when you tell these things. I have woken up in the middle of the night thinking I messed up on that episode. That can't be true. That can't, even though I've spent hours and hours researching it, reading about it, because it just sounds like incredulous. Like it sounds, we tell women to lean in until like
Right.
you're flat on the table. But
Literally.
you, if you don't, if you're living with chronic health conditions,
Yeah.
how are we leaning in, right? And
Yeah.
we talk about inequities in the gender pay gap. We talk about how we barely have any female CEOs in Canada. If those discrepancies can happen in other places, why can't it happen in medicine?
Yeah.
When medicine was built around men, white men. So
Yes.
why is it so incredulous that these gaps exist, right? And
Yes.
there's a push for scientists and researchers to do exactly that, to study conditions outside of the reproductive conditions, because a lot of medicine, the research that we have around women is around reproductive organs, right?
Yes, because you're
We need
supposed to
medicine.
make babies.
Right, yeah. But a lack of research around migraines, which impact like a lot of women.
Yeah.
So, what I'm trying to do on Mistreated is to offer the foundation, like the history, show people the history. For example, ADHD, symptoms of ADHD were first identified in the 1700s, but how it shows up in girls and women, very different symptoms, it shows up very differently. That wasn't studied until the 1990s. So 200 years.
That's insane.
Right?
That's insane.
Right. And it was another male doctor who decided to take this on and studied how ADHD presented in women and girls. And it's been life-changing for those people, right?
Yes.
So I'm trying to offer the foundation, history, everything is well researched.
Yes.
In our metadata, we include the studies that we've used, because I also
it's
want
very
to show
fact-based. There's a lot of research,
Yes.
like it's grounded in evidence, which I think is important.
Evidence, and I want to show people the research, and I also want to center lived experience. We have a lot of smart people, experts on the show, but I think lived experience is so important.
It's like you're telling your story through it. It's not just about the science or research. It brings it together.
And it's information. I think if you're researching, if you're in the research space, lived experience is very much like for yourself, like how migraines show up with you. Right?
And that's
like
often where people end up going into research on those topics anyways, is because they have them themselves. Like a lot of the people that I follow for migraines are like had them themselves, right? They either became researchers for that or doctors.
Yeah. So it's like it's a nice balance, and I'm learning so much. I have a lot of blind spots, so I'm always doing different call outs on social media saying like, I know about fibroids, but I don't know about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I don't know about PCOS or now PMOS.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know about endometriosis, but I know about adenomyosis.
Right.
We're talking about women's brain health. Like 70% of women of Alzheimer's sufferers are women. Why is that?
Right.
80% of people with autoimmune disease are women.
Right.
Why is that?
So are these some of the different types of topics that you cover?
Yes. Yeah. We did one on Alzheimer's, and we are in the process of doing something on autoimmune disease.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said you've done some on ADHD. I know you've done some different ones on fertility.
On fertility, pregnancy loss. Sometimes these conversations are really hard to have. And they happen more frequently than we realize.
Yes.
And then because it's one of those topics where people don't want to know about it, don't want to hear about it. Like even when you become pregnant, you're told not to say anything until like 8 to 12 weeks.
Right.
And it's not a bad thing, but it also creates a culture of silence and shame. And so if you were to lose your baby, then you can't talk about it, right? You have to process that yourself. And we also have to research, like, why do miscarriages happen?
Right.
Why, and that's science that we're not doing very much of. So I think even like the history of forced and coerced sterilization of Indigenous women in this country, right? And how it's showing up still right now in 2026. It's hard to have
it's one of those things that when you see it in the news, you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
Like it's unbelievable.
Or even just gynecology, like the discipline of that gynecology was created on the foundation of doctors who experimented on enslaved African women. And the instruments that were created from these awful things are instruments that we continue to use in the gynecologist office. So how do we reconcile that history, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to have these conversations and to also talk about solutions like Femtech.
Yes.
Femtech is something that people are talking about could help address some of these
So what's
gaps.
Femtech?
So Femtech is like, I guess, I don't want to say female tech, but it was Ida Tin from Europe came up with the term Femtech, and it's about technology that's centered around women's health. And so using technology innovations to address those gaps. For instance, I was just talking about gynecology. the speculum is something that we use in the gynecologist, like, the jaws of death. I hate, like, it's just metal, it's gross.
Yes.
If you have, like, if you're a woman and you've been in the gynecologist's office, you've had an experience with that.
Yeah.
And they use it for pap smears, which are very important to catch cervical cancer, right? And that instrument was created by James Marion Sims, a doctor who experimented on enslaved Black women. And so 150 years, it's been the same thing until recently.
Yeah.
These two engineers from Europe have created a soft, a new speculum with silicone. It's smaller, it's warm, it's not cold. So just try, and there's another Femtech thing, a bra that detects diabetes.
Right. Oh, wow.
Or like period blood, if you study period blood, it can detect certain illnesses. So just kind of like that research and that science.
Yes. And I love like as we see more women in tech and science, like doing all of these interesting jobs, so we see more of those products, because of course you're like, oh, there's a gap in the market for this, or like, I want to solve this problem on this speculum.
Can I just recommend a really good book? It's called The Vagina Bible by Marina Gerner. I spoke to her and she said, so the book is about Femtech, but she said that men investors are still getting more money, that the men in the Femtech space are getting more money. And the number one period app is actually created by men. And she said she spoke to one of these investors, and his reluctance to fund these kind of things for Femtech. He's like, I don't want to talk about vaginas on a Monday business morning. So even just saying the word vagina for these investors is like, that's an ick, right?
Yeah.
But so that's why she called the book The Vagina Bible, which is great. But it's like, even though there's that space happening, the women who are creating this Femtech, it's harder for them to get money. Like the ones who created that speculum, they're getting money by crowdfunding. It's not like they have a bunch of money to do this stuff. So there's still the inequities that exist, but at least there's something that could offer some solutions.
Right. And I think, talking about it, learning about it, spreading knowledge is one of the ways that we can do that. And definitely your podcast is helping with that. Do you have advice about how we turn it into like more action?
I think talk to your MP. In Canada right now, there's a bill that's being moved forward called Bill S243. It's a national framework on women's health. A lot of different women's groups have come together and they're trying to push this forward, because something that happens in Canada, we have provinces, and the provinces, they're responsible for health. So health falls under the provincial jurisdiction. And so depending on whatever province, your health care could be different, and that's not fair, right? But having a national framework to actually push the government to put money towards funding, because you mentioned 7% of federal
50% of the population, but 7%.
Yes, 50%, and that 7% has to be broken down into many different conditions. So for PMOS, for endometriosis, for migraines, for whatever, right?
Autoimmune,
it has a lot of things that it has to address.
And we have years of catching up, right? Like we know so much more about Viagra than we do of anything else.
Oh my gosh, don't even get me started about that. We actually did an episode on that, on the pink pill, and that was really fascinating. But so contact your MP.
Yes, that's good advice.
Email and say
speak up for yourself at the doctor, talk about this bill.
Advocate. And also, one thing that I will say to people, if a doctor says they don't want to do a test for you or an MRI, or I will say to people, if you are having surgery, abdominal surgery, always ask for an MRI. Even if you're told that you're wasting taxpayer dollars, something that was said to me, even though I'm a taxpayer.
You're like,
insist on the MRI, because that's the top of the, I'm not a doctor, but I'm just saying from my personal experience.
Right.
And also, if they don't want to give you a test or whatever, just say, can you put that in my notes?
Yes.
That you don't want to give me that.
Yes.
And most times they'll give you the test.
Yeah, because they don't want it written down. I often think about that on the advocacy side, because that's what I do for work federally. and think like we're half of the population, right? And we see women, we dig down in particular issues like breast cancer or different things, but it's like we should be able to get together and make this happen. So maybe a bill
Yes.
like that is a great place to start. So I'll have
Mhm.
to look at that more myself too.
For sure. And yeah, hopefully it can be passed. They just recently passed a bill for men's health, which is important. Like, I'm not
It's
undermining
all
that.
important.
It's
Yes.
all important. And we spoke to on our next episode, we're actually going to be talking about the bill. And
Okay.
the expert we spoke to said by having a men's framework, it shows that there is a need to have it because
Yes,
there is sex and gender differences.
of
So
course.
hopefully that works in favor of the women's framework being passed.
I almost said except for in the US because you're not allowed to say like women and all these words when you're
Which
doing
is, you know
research
what? And
or
I'm
black
glad you,
or
I'm actually
like
glad you brought up the US because
anything.
I'm so
We
like,
have a lot of American listeners too.
I'm so glad you brought up the US because a lot of the research that we've used on this podcast is from the NIH,
Yeah.
and from the National Library of Medicine.
Hmm.
And they've had so many cuts to their
Yeah.
research. There was one thing that was cut around sickle cell, and
Mm.
it was cut because diversity or DEI or like it was something black was in it. And the researcher was like, sickle cell just doesn't impact like African Americans. It impacts a lot of people, right? And the word woman is considered to be DEI. So all the researching around women's health,
Yeah, it's
they're not getting
insane.
funding that they need. And so
No.
it's impacting like the women in the United States.
Hmm.
They're going to feel that, and we're
Oh,
also going to
yes.
feel that.
Well,
And
yeah,
I'm
because
worried.
so many people, right? The US was a great standard, had great
Yeah.
research, lots of
Yeah.
money put into that kind of stuff. And so
Mhm.
other countries would rely on it. And other
Yeah.
countries are
Yeah,
not
they were
relying on
leading.
it now.
Yeah, they were
Just,
leading. And I think it's a
yes.
great opportunity for Canada to
Hmm.
fill in those gaps. Canada is actively seeking out scientists and doctors from the United States. And I
Yep.
think it's an opportunity for us to fill in those gaps because that research is needed. And also, even when you're developing drugs, it doesn't, like when you're doing the clinical trials with drugs, it doesn't happen in a year, 2 years. Sometimes it can take up to 27 years,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That's like a generation. So we don't have any time to lose. And I think, again, advocate for your health like it's like keep on top of your health like it's your credit.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good message to share.
Mhm.
Let's jump into some of the rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Before we do that, is there anything else you wanted to add that we missed?
No, I'm good. Thank you so much for the interest in the podcast. Really appreciate
Okay.
it. Yeah.
What is the best rule that you've ever broken?
Oh, the best rule I've ever. That is a great question. So funny because I'm very compliant. I was raised to be very compliant and not like. I think it's to keep quiet.
Mm.
I grew up in a culture where girls to this day kneel for their fathers,
Oh,
and where the men in the family eat first before the girls. And yeah, I actually, as I'm saying it, I realize why so many people in my family don't like me.
I love that.
Yeah, use your voice.
Yes.
Even if you're afraid, we're all
Mm.
afraid, but we have to use your voice. Otherwise, nothing
Yes.
changes.
Yes. And I will add to that too, the more you use your voice, the easier it gets to do it. What is one book that has made you wiser or changed your perspective?
The Four Agreements.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I love that book because it's four simple things. I think it's don't take things personally, do your best, and the other two are escaping me. But the don't take things personally and do your best have been really good for me.
Hmm.
And it just changed. It was like kind of like a blueprint. And also The Alchemist. I know everybody quotes The Alchemist, but The Alchemist for me was like the belief that the universe is conspiring
Hmm.
to give you what you want, to help you, to keep you safe. I've been on my own since I was 16, so I've always felt kind of untethered. And I read that book in my early 20s, and it just gave me
Hmm.
like, it made me feel safe in a way. And
Right.
so that's something that I come back to a lot.
Oh, interesting. Who is a woman who continually inspires you?
Oh, my granny.
I love that.
I couldn't even before you stopped, like my grandmother, and she wasn't my, she was a stranger that became family. She's the woman that sponsored my family to Canada. And she was from London, Ontario. She heard about my dad. We were living in a refugee camp. My dad was a single dad with 4 kids, and she was like, I'm going to help them. And she helped us come to Canada. And she was a phenom, like in her own right. She was the first woman to open up a medical store that supplied different things. Like if you had a mastectomy, I think her store opened in the 70s. And back then, if you had a mastectomy, you couldn't get prosthetics, or it was hard to get them. So she supplied that. If you had if you needed colostomy bags, she supplied those. And she was also a nurse. And she had been diagnosed with cancer very young. And so she understood what it was like to live with a chronic condition, and where your body had been cut up, and, and she just had she was like, when she passed away, and our family was not the only family she sponsored. She sponsored families from all around the world.
Oh, I love that.
In her funeral, I saw like men when she died, she was in her mid-50s, and from cancer. And I saw men crying, and I had never seen a man cry before in my life. And there was this guy, Tom, that she used to look after. She just knew he needed somebody, so she would go to the old age home. Do we call it senior center? But where he used to live. And she would go and sit with him, take him for walks. And shortly after Granny died, Tom passed away. But she was always such a helper, right? So my granny, Sydney Tebbett.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I don't know if we've had a granny before, so that's a very inspirational, for sure. Where can people find the podcast?
We are on Apple Podcasts, Mistreated TVO, and we're also on TVO Today YouTube channel. So check us out there. And if you have a pitch or an idea, just email me, mistreatedpodcast@tvo.org, or find me on social media.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here, Naaman, for sharing your personal story and also just all this information that will certainly empower women in their lives and hopefully also allow us to advocate for ourselves better too.
And Stephanie, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Women Don't Do That. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating or review. Connect with us on Instagram @WomenDon'tDoThat and visit our website www.WomendontDOthat.com for more details. Join our Patreon to support our work. Find all of the links in the show notes. Remember, you have the power to transform your what ifs into let's go. Together, let's redefine your possible. Until next time. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Women Don't Do That, Stephanie Mitton, or affiliated brands.